We are back once more, scouring the aisles of B&M for the latest exclusive Doctor Who action figure releases. In today's review, I'm taking a look at Emperor Davros from the 7th Doctor story, Remembrance of the Daleks, and rather bizarrely, a first for this series, a single-carded release. The recommended retail for this product is £12.99, and previously this was quite a sought-after classic Doctor Who action figure, although this latest 2024 version does sport quite a number of differences from the original release. So due to this being a singular figure release, we have a brand new packaging, and I really love this. If it wasn't for the Easter egg style finish in the centre, this is one of those products that I would actually be tempted to buy twice to keep one in the box, because it does look quite pretty. It's a really nice scale, it fits the figure well. The box overall is a corrugated card, it's nice and strong, it feels a fairly good quality. 60th anniversary Doctor Who logo is present in the top corner, although frustratingly, because of the way the figure has been positioned, it is completely obscured. Because of the way the protective shell also almost hugs the action figure, it's rather difficult to spot quality control issues, especially the head and the dome, which is set rather deeply back into the packaging. I do think bringing back the standard preview window would have been much nicer for this release. It does rather let the product down, to be honest. It emphasises that perhaps this line is more budget because it's a part of B&M rather than to the Vortex character options online exclusives. At the top of the box we have the story title, Remembrance of the Daleks, 1988. Features bubble feels rather empty and pointless this time, to be honest. This figure is a part of the 5.5/14cm scale collector series. We have the now traditional limited edition embossed golden sticker. At the bottom, the title being Emperor Davros, not to be confused with the other Davroses available. Towards the side of the title, it states that this is from the 7th Doctor era. To correspond with this era, it means that the vortex presented on the box has this purpley hue. This can perhaps be seen most clearly at the side of the box. Little TARDIS graphic spans the corner of the box, which I find quite neat. The side of the box also contains the Doctor Who logo. The preview window also continues round to the side, although in a very small fashion, so it's a bit pointless. The other side of the box has nothing else going on, really. A lot of the company information is present at the base of the box, and you've got the Doctor Who logo and the character options web address at the top. Again, I think the back of the box really shows off how nice this size of packaging is. It follows the same format to usual. Nice blend of the vibrant white and the purpley hues of the vortex. Doctor Who logo again, and a little story synopsis for Remembrance of the Daleks and Davros himself. This Davros design is most certainly the boldest, and it kind of extends into the realm, I think, of extended Doctor Who media. It's quite exciting that it appeared on screen, and it absolutely stands out on the shelf, and looks great alongside the other Imperial Daleks. Throughout this whole review, it's basically going to be one big comparison to the original, what's changed, particularly from a colour palette perspective. But before we get to all of the exciting stuff, we have a fairly regular base and skirt section. The fender has been sculpted in a vibrant white coloured plastic, it hasn't been painted. This is the same for the rest of the Emperor Davros going on up above. And in keeping with the other Imperial Daleks, this is the standard 80s two-stack formation. Unlike some of the other B&M Dalek releases, this is just a matte white. We have no wash, no scratch marks, no weathering, and to be honest, that's fine. Davros is 100% studio bound within the story. He barely moves, he doesn't need a worn effect, and the white and gold design always looks the best when it's pristine. Despite him not moving much, he still has your regular Dalek stuff underneath the fender, including your two back wheels and the rotating wheel at the front. Probably a really boring production difference, but as you can see on the original here, we have a product code. This stands out a lot because it is a black text. This is not only not present on the 2024 edition, in fact all of the text stamping is also different between the two releases. As for the skirt section, of course this continues the slightly revised colour scheme. I think it looks really nice. Much like any Imperial Dalek, the hemispheres stand out a lot. They're incredibly dazzling. I love the paint application on these. They have a lovely shimmery finish. As for the new white base, I also really like this. I think it's neat. It stands out more than the initial, which was perhaps a tad too cream. The spacing of the hemispheres is exactly as you would expect. There is a slight gap towards the back. But other than that, it is very familiar territory, and that is completely fine. It looks really nice, and it in-keeps with the rest of the Imperial Daleks. It's great for consistency. Despite looking very familiar, because it is, there is a slight retool to the skirt, so it extends up slightly higher than usual. Of course, usually a Dalek skirt does end rather abruptly and straight, while Emperor Davros does peak slightly towards the front. And this makes room for two circles, which have absolutely no purpose whatsoever. They're there, they're consistent to what's seen on screen, so that's good. Progressing further up now to the more exciting part of this action figure, the Underdome. Of course, this is unique to Davros, and again, I think the vibrant white really works here, the fact that the plastic has been sculpted in that base colour. To start off with, we have this trim running around the entire circumference, which curves upwards towards the front. There is no additional paint application across this section, but the sculpting work does the job, really. Just before we get to the main bit, we have these small rectangular teeth running all the way around, and this sculpt does actually appear a lot sharper to the original. Sculpting work on the earlier version feels slightly softer, the teeth less defined. Before we get to the dome itself, we have this, what I do believe is a decagon, in fact, running around the sides. Credit where credit is due. I don't think that I've seen a decagon incorporated into a Dalek design before, but it works well. Running along the front of the trim, we have these small golden rectangles on each of the corners, and for the most part, I think these are rather well painted. But as always with the B&M line, take extra care with these smaller details when selecting your Davros off the shelf. The back does continue this lip, but we don't have the golden corner plating. I suppose you could say this does make the front more snazzy and eye-catching. So moving up to the top of Davros now, this lovely dome design, it's incredibly unique. To start with, we have this bronze lip which runs around the bottom of the lid. In my version, in fact, this is really neatly painted, so I'm rather impressed with this. And if you're in store looking for quality control issues, make sure that the bronze banding runs all the way around to the circular hinge at the side. You may think, oh, that's quite a small detail, but honestly, it's one of those things that once you've noticed it, you don't tend to unnotice it, which is really frustrating. Much like the lower half of Davros, the dome has also been sculpted in a vibrant white coloured plastic, so this really pops. And as you would expect, the dome on the original is a much more cream finish. The dome lights for Davros are almost an exaggerated version of the regular Imperial Dalek dome lights, sculpted in a clear plastic. The bronze decoration painted across the base and the top. Slap bang in the middle of the dome and standing out quite a lot, we have this lovely hexagonal window in the very centre. This is a clear plastic, and lots of attention is brought to this panel because of this golden bronze outline. This is rather precisely painted, and this is in fact another paint application which differs to the original. Forbidden Planet exclusive Davros instead has a black rim running around the side of the window, and this does stand out a lot actually because it's basically the only black paint application throughout the entirety of the main dome. But frustratingly, for our latest B&M exclusive Davros, this isn't in fact accurate whatsoever. Even more annoyingly, the original is more accurate, so it's not even like they've changed it for the better. As you can see through some episode stills, there is clearly a black outer line, and it's not gold. As an alternative, they could have kept it black, but as an improvement to the original, they could have gave the window a white or grey silver tint. They could have had a little sheen down the middle to replicate where Terry Malloy was flashing the torch within the episode. This would have been different from the original, but also more accurate. Sometimes I do think this line does have a habit of changing the colours for no reason whatsoever, just for the sake of being different. Turning around to the back of the dome now, as you would expect, there's nothing to note here. This is probably the best bit of Davros to show off and compare the new base colour. To be honest, if anything, it just looks like the original has been left out in the sun too long. Now for the exciting bit, let's slide back the dome and take a look at Davros underneath. Now the dome itself is of course on this circular hinge, which does simply pop the plastic into place. It does slide back and forth incredibly easily, although sadly I have seen a few people's Davroses where the top dome doesn't quite line up with the rest of Davros, so it looks rather skewed and warped. And sadly, this is something probably quite difficult to spot when Davros is in the packaging. But as I've mentioned, the dome is removable, so maybe just pop it off, slide it back into place, and then hopefully click it in, and simply hope for the best. Maybe it's down to the plastic, which has been used, being much cheaper than the original release, because after all, the B&M line is a budget series. I do love this design of Davros, but this bit is a bit weird, because he's just suspended in a pit of nothingness, represented here with a matte black paint application. The divide between the cream of the outer shell and this matte black in the middle is really well painted. For the most part, it inkeeps within the lines, so big bonus points for that. Sadly though, this part of the trim is a little bit vulnerable to the golden paint of the dome rubbing off after a bit of use. The golden trim of the dome meets the lower base. Occasional bronze smudge is already present, so I imagine if you are a younger Doctor Who fan, no doubt a solid line will appear quite quickly from moving the dome up and down. Whilst on paper it is really exciting to see a re-release of Emperor Davros due to it being a part of a budget brand series, these more practical issues do start to emerge, I think, over time. Now by far, my least favourite thing about this Davros re-release is for some reason God knows why, Character Options have decided to paint the background of the dome bronzy gold like the hemispheres on the skirt. Meanwhile, the original, the background is in matte black. It blends in with the pit of nothingness down below. It also makes Davros himself and his face stand out much more. And then you look at this one. He's really disappointing. Not only does the colour just feel wrong in the background, there is also the occasional speck of plastic in there as well, so not great from a quality control side of things. And above all, I just think it doesn't look very good, and to be honest, within the story, the scenes are quite dimly lit anyway, but I certainly don't think it looked like this. I think no matter what the actual colour of the prop is, on our TV screens, it looks shadowy, it looks black, and in my opinion, this looks much better. It's more ominous, so they should have just kept this, rather than doing the weird bronze. So this particular version of Davros does come dressed in what appears to be a bin bag with several wires wrapped around it, like a cheap Halloween costume from the early 2000s. The wires do also continue around to the sides. A series of yellows, greys and dark blues have the opposite side, a little bit more darker blue and a little bit of red decoration in there as well. For the most part, I think the wire sculpt works really well. We have a series of tubes and smaller wires. It's built up, it looks rather messy and chaotic. Although I'm going to be honest, I think that this is much duller than the original release. The original version has lots more vibrant colour, particularly the light blues, greens and reds. There's also more of it. Paint application is certainly more slapdash and messy on the original release, but in this very particular context, I think this is better. To me, this latest version is just too dull. So again, comparing to the story itself, it is impossible to replicate exactly what is seen within the episode in the 5.5 scale, as there is just wires jutting out all over the place. But the vibrancy of these wires does seem more accurate on the original figure, aside from maybe the occasional splash of white on the shoulder, which isn't present on either release. And it's really odd that they've gone inaccurate with the torso wires, but have gone the extra mile to put the effort in to change the colours of the wires on top of Davros's head to red. I would have loved a little bit of more intricate paint application, particularly within that central blue eye, maybe a bit of detailing within the centre to replicate an iris, or at minimum a darkened outline surrounding it. Some of the paint applications throughout this figure are just a bit too simple. So the same head sculpt has been used on this latest version of Davros, more on that in a bit, but the paint application overall has been massively revised. He now looks incredibly yellow and rather pasty compared to the original. As a reminder, the original version followed a rather similar colour scheme to the Resurrection and Revelation versions of 80s Davros, which isn't particularly accurate to the TV story. I do think they've done a better job. I like the pasty complexion, I like the darker wash over the top, emphasising the various wrinkles within his very skeletal face. Darker grey highlights in particular around the mouth and the lower eye sockets give the appearance that the skin is drooping, decaying. Also appreciate the colour change to the wires on the forehead and around the back of the headdress as well, now a vibrant red. Again, early Davros was a combination of vibrant oranges and lighter reds. There is also the silver of the headdress on top of the head with a series of wires and orbs. Everything about the wires and the headdress on this latest release is incredibly squishy, which does rather unnerve me, to be honest. Again, this was much more rigid on the original edition. Davros does work in Scaro's call centre in his spare time, so he does have a little microphone coming around the side from the back of the neck. This is just his silver with a little dot in the centre, no additional paint on this. When selecting your Davros off the shelves of B&M, definitely check the positioning of the microphone, as this is a rather solid plastic, so it's not that flexible. It will snap if you force it. On some Davroses, it does look like he's sniffing the microphone, which obviously isn't ideal. But even as a younger Doctor Who fan when this figure first came out, I was always of the opinion that the normal 80s Terry Malloy sculpt from Resurrection and Revelation of the Daleks simply did not fit the Emperor Davros body. For the vast majority of the scenes, Davros is craning his neck upwards, looking at the screen with Sylvester spouting off about rice pudding or something. I think that that would look much better on this figure, although it would require a brand new head sculpt. Character Options have gone as far as they can with the pre-existing sculpt by changing the paint to make it appear more like what is seen within the story, but I think that this would have been a great opportunity again to do a new head sculpt for this Davros, although I guess it's not essential. But as I've mentioned within previous B&M exclusive action figure reviews, I'm giving up on trying to determine what the budget can and can't do. It seems to change constantly, and things which seem viable don't happen, and things which don't seem viable do. Regardless of sculpting changes though, one thing that Character Options could have done, I think, with this release is improve the paint applications. Whilst the overall colour scheme is lovely with the white and gold, I really like that improvement. I think the torso section with the wires, the head itself, some of the smaller details like the iris in the centre, that's a little bit disappointing. Not only are some of the changes actually seemingly inaccurate to what's seen on screen, particularly that bronze background, some of the new paint applications just fall a bit flat. They're a bit too dull, which is a shame. So there we go, that is the Doctor Who action figure of Emperor Davros from Remembrance of the Daleks, exclusive to B&M. It's a great opportunity to add a previously very rare figure to your action figure collection if you missed out on the original. However, I can't help but think that this action figure was a missed opportunity to sharpen up some of those smaller details and make a genuinely very impressive release. I think some of the paint applications fall very flat, the sculpting is great, the action figure itself is great, but the visual appearance of it does let it down a little bit. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for more Doctor Who content. Have a nice day. I shall see you all next time.